Meteorologist Casey Cloud live with you in the Weather Center on this Saturday. The FSU Kent State game, unfortunately, now having to be delayed due to lightning in the area. I know it's kind of an interesting scenario because we had some action coming in from the north and that weekend on out. And things, were looking like maybe for a moment there we might get lucky, but different boundaries in play. And unfortunately, we did not in terms of lightning within the 8 mile radius. We had it just over the 8 mile earlier, and then another area just developing to the south. Now, they may not really get rain in the stadium, and it's sunny there as they went into the delay, but we have lightning just 3-4 miles away now to the south. With that new advisory just literally popped up since we started talking here on our screen. It came out at 4:57 though. This is for gust of 40. Now the stadium itself, as I'll go ahead and show you here, as I take the radar data off, I know they weren't in an advisory for another storm earlier on, but it didn't end up impacting them in terms of either the delay, within 8 miles needing that, or any real precip. But as we kind of zoom on in here, we're trying to give you guys the very latest, and there's the stadium, obviously, there at FSU. So let me go ahead and put our marker on this, and we'll zoom back out here. And you see they're not in the advisory for this one, but unfortunately, it's all about the 8 mile radius because in theory, a lightning strike could strike, 8 miles from the apparent thunderstorm. So that's why they have to do this, even though it's not necessarily headed toward the stadium. I know, so about a 30-minute delay is what we think right now, but every time we get another strike within 8 miles, like what they had up at Clemson earlier on, you get, that clock to get restarted. I know there's 2:39 left in the second quarter on the ACC network. Florida State up 35-7 on Kent State there. Florida State number 7 in the country. Kent State not so good of a team. FSU playing really well here. As we were looking at things, all 35 though of those points in the first quarter. I know at least FSU's not playing like Clemson, who after their delay, their deficit gets even bigger, down by 20 against Syracuse there in the fourth on, I believe, ESPN2 there. But the big story in just the last several moments there, though, for FSU, I know some of the guys getting inducted in the Hall of Fame there, like Rashad Green and Jameis Winston today, the FSU Hall of Fame. But unfortunately, we just saw there, if you're watching the telecast, star quarterback for FSU, Tommy Castellanos there, being injured to some degree. We don't know, if it's really significant or not, but he's limping off there, even toward the locker room to some degree there. Hopefully it's not anything major, but, a situation there where not what you want to see, obviously. If you're FSU, I mean, it may have been an ankle injury here. We'll have to see if he's, might not necessarily need him today for the rest of the game, get some of the other quarterbacks experience. But next Friday night in Charlottesville, up there at UVA, then Knowles, may very well need him to try to be able to win that. I mean, we'll see. It looks like Kevin Sperry is the number 2. There's been some question if it's him or Brock Glenn, the actual number 2. But Kevin Sperry came in. I think it might have just been for about one play before we had that delay. So this game is not really about this game. It's about staying, injury-free, which unfortunately right there not happening. And then, it's about just preparing the team for future, games here on the season, really. I mean, with a lead like this against Kent State up by 28. So, well in hand, it would seem, in terms of the game. But again, if, about, preparation for future games, getting guys playing time and staying injury-free, which apparently did not happen. There would maybe potentially some type of ankle injury there toward, FSU squad there. Tommy Castellanos, that from Waycross, Georgia. By the way, Clemson just scored in their game against Syracuse. They're down by a couple touchdowns. That game got delayed by weather for a while up there, and it started at noon. It's 5, and it's in the fourth quarter at 9 minutes even left to go. I mean, we'll see the radar up in that direction real quick. Again, they might not even really get wet at the stadium there in Tallahassee. It's kind of an odd scenario. I mean, you can have those ponchos ready, but some folks get in the concourse because of the lightning within the radius. So a tricky situation. Some folks may just go home, after this. At least with the game well in hand, it would seem. I mean, I guess you never know in college football, but I would suspect, based on my experience, Kent State just doesn't seem like they have the squad to be able to compete there. But again, we're watching things, we're tracking them here in toward the Weather Center. Just trying to give you guys the very latest on what's going on. Trying to keep you informed here as the situation does evolve. And I know, again, we're watching that weather up toward like South Carolina. Let me go ahead and throw that view up. You can see the broad view, nothing, right around Clemson at the moment. I know one thing that they're looking at around Tallahassee, though, the lightning, sure, but these temperatures have been very nasty in terms of, readings there on the thermometer. 92 heat index is what I'm seeing. I don't know if it does show up in there. There's just a little bit of that, humidity. It's not overwhelming necessarily to get that higher, but a 90 air temperature was in the mid-90s earlier on. I'll check the FSU weather stem, for temperature and for the lightning there in the radius. I know it is 93 there, or it was. Looks like there's some type of issue there. The conditions are being estimated. So let me see if I can get another look. Then the lightning stuff isn't necessarily really estimated, but that is, I know it's 90 at the Rex Sportsplex, about 90-ish there. But lightning there, we just had a 1 minute ago a cloud-to-cloud strike 7.11 miles from the stadium there off toward the south-southwest. I know, there are different radiuses there at FSU, about a delay, 8 miles. Such a, critical thing there as we're tracking here. Now, it's not something I can see, guys, on the air. It's not something I can say on the air, but I know if you search it on YouTube, back when I was at FSU, I know I did a story there, a story about weather delay criteria for FSU called Imperfect Storm there. It's on the Florida State Seminoles YouTube channel there, and I produced that there when I was in a class in college. It has about 1,600 views, 10 years old, so it's possible the criteria could have changed then, but I wrote that story, did the interviews for that. I didn't do the voiceover, but you can watch that on YouTube. I can't say that I don't have rights to that, obviously, to show, because that, all the footage and stuff in that, belong to FSU. There's some different folks in charge now and the like. This is 10 years ago, but if you just search on YouTube there, Imperfect Storm FSU, and you'll get that to come on up there. So you can watch that and learn more about the different rules. About 4 minutes and 7 seconds, maybe, or let me back that up. 4 minutes 58 seconds on there. So goes over some of the different things here. I know within 15 miles is when they start to be mindful, and we were watching that earlier. Just over 8 miles there was a delay. Yeah, or just over 8 miles there was that concern, but not necessarily a delay. But then 8 miles is when we had the delay come into play. So, that's when, really having to take action. So, when you get to within 8 miles, and we had some of those to the south, just, right when, delay being, called for right after, we had that come into play. Again, you can watch that over on YouTube. It's not my channel. This is, I don't have the rights to that, but it's something I wrote when I was in college there, the script for that, and the, I produced that, did the interviews for it. So you can watch that on YouTube there, Imperfect Storm. It's been a, while since we've had a football delay at FSU. We've had other delays, but, with baseball and the like. But we thought we might have one with the Alabama game today with a lower chance of rain, but I went a little higher than some folks. May not even get the rain, even though we have a delay. But I went 40, or let's take that 35% there for the rain chance today at the stadium there for this game. But, might not even get the precip. As you see our Doppler, the lightning is down in here. But because of the 8 miles, if you hear that thunder, that means you're close enough to be struck. And any time when you have any of that lightning with 8 miles, that triggers that half-hour delay because of safety protocol. So at 5:06, we actually had a ground strike 4.56 miles south of the stadium, according to FSU weather stem. So, you kind of see that there if you look. This is what kind of concerns you, because you have more action down near Woodville. We have a strike further north, and in theory, not that it will necessarily happen, but in theory, you could get another one of those, closer to that red square there, which is a stadium. If it's a ground strike, then that could be a deadly scenario. So that's why these different, protocols are in play here. You know, it's about safety. It's about keeping folks safe. I know some folks, you know, may not like it, but this is what we have to do here, unfortunately. You know, as we're tracking things. I know my senior year at FSU, we had that delay, that game, I believe it was against Texas State. It was the opener, and the game didn't end after midnight. Knowles won that one easily, but we played that game there back in 2015, September 5th into September 6th there. We won 59-16. That was at a game I was at that had a delay. It was something where really the Stormax, and it was, you know, pretty much on the fringes there. It was pretty much on the fringes there of the radius, because I don't think we ever really had the rain come into play there. The game I had, you know, when I was there that we did have rain for, but no delay because it wasn't lightning, was the game there 2 days after the 2014 Scherzer Library shooting there. We had, you know, that terrible event take place, and we had a delay, not necessarily needing to be called for there because we didn't have lightning, but we had the precip in place, so it was wet, and folks needed those ponchos. A lot of them, you know, didn't really have them because they weren't expecting that precip. I did bring mine, thankfully, but it was still a mess there. You know, I brought it just in case I really did not expect, even as a, you know, person there in college, you know, like, you know, just expecting that. But that was back in 2014 there, you know, studying weather and the like, and just, you know, a situation here where, you know, you just want to be extra careful here in these type of instances. So, you know, just trying to be on top of things. I know that game was against Boston College there. Roberto Aguayo had that late game winning field goal to win that one 20-17. The late Mike Patrick had to call for that on ABC. I think it was an ABC ESPN2 reverse mirror type of scenario, but that game had rain, but not lightning, thankfully. And that was a terrible week there with that library shooting on that Thursday, and then on that Saturday, we had a police officer lose their life in a shooting in North Tallahassee. So, again, that was when we had rain, but not lightning. Today we might have lightning, you know, there, but not rain. And then we did have some rain for the Alabama game, but no lightning. It was not continuous, you know, like that game there against BC. It was a lot more, you know, through that one there, you know, that Alabama game earlier this year, you know, the home opener there. And that, ironically, even though it was a few months later, it was the first FSU home football game after the tragedy in April. But as we go ahead and look back here, as we look and as we track things here, you can kind of see the scenario. Let me go ahead and jump back on over again. This is an odd situation because there's the airport. You know, north of the airport's the stadium. This is mainly this ground clutter. Down here is where we have the heavy downpour and lightning. I know. Let me go ahead and go over to the Moody radar here. And I want to do that because that way we can see things a little bit better. It takes my marker off the stadium, but maybe a few sprinkles in there. But most of this is to the south. But you can, in theory, have one strike that gets there on that, you know, 8 mile or within the 8 mile radius, and then you have a problem here. So, again, just kind of a storyline there as we're looking and as we're tracking things. Again, we have this weather delay here at the game. Let me go ahead and pull up some traffic cameras here. We'll go ahead and pull up some traffic cameras in the area. So let me go ahead and do that here. Some Florida 511 perspectives. Let me see if we can pull one up there, Brevard Street at Tennessee Street. So 513 here on this Saturday. This breaking news, breaking weather, you know, I guess in a way, breaking sports alert here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking them. So we have that view available now. It's just on man band, but I do have it loaded on in here. So we'll go ahead and take our traffic source here, and you'll be able to see the Florida 511 perspective, Brevard Street at Tennessee Street there. You can see some traffic. I've got to be thinking some folks are just leaving early. You know, even if this delay doesn't last that long, but you know, maybe even leaving their parties or they're watching the game early. But you see some darker skies. We don't necessarily see precip. Look like somebody just going by there on that sidewalk, you know, on one of those things there. that people use on campus and the like. But you can kind of see here, looking at the scenario, you can just kind of tell here that it's not too bad overall with the weather conditions. Not too bad with the weather conditions. I know folks are wondering, and there you go again with somebody maybe on a skateboard. Maybe this time, I can't tell if that's what that is or another one of those devices on the sidewalk there. You can see the sun's out. I mean, we're heard a delay. That's kind of why I was hesitant to even start a stream up, until we had to delay. I had it ready, of course, but I didn't want to start it like we've been doing sometimes with this radar stream because, it's a situation where even though we have, this pop-up accident, wasn't a guarantee we'd have a delay. We unfortunately got some development to the south on the southern part, of the radius there, and that caused the issue to require that delay. But let me see if we have any updates since we do have that delay, to figure out what's going on with FSU's quarterback there. I mean, it may, remain a mystery all the way up into next Friday night how he got, injured there in terms of and how severe it is. But we'll just have to wait and see. Now, folks are reacting on social media about the injury now, talking about, that it's making them sick how the sequence happened, the injury and then the delay. So, again, I wanted to see how serious it is. He, gingerly walked to that locker room when the delay happened. So, apparent. Some folks, it looked like an ankle, but it could have been just apparent lower leg injury, or, is another way to describe that. It wasn't near as bad, obviously, as what happened to Jordan Travis, but still, could be very impactful for the Seminoles. So, as we go ahead and continue to give you guys the latest, we're going to keep on checking some different things here in the Weather Center. Again, we are live right now giving you this coverage. Let me see if there's any official updates from FSU football Twitter. The official account. See if we have any updates. Let me also, as I'm doing that, okay, last strike within 8 miles was about 7 minutes ago. So that was a cloud to cloud, 3.32 miles away. Hoping this will be a pretty short delay. We're now getting a word here of a couple things. First off, noting here that the official delay happened at 4:53. Now, if you didn't have any more strikes after that within the radius, you would resume at like about 5:23-ish. You might have a warm-up period in there, give or take. But the thing about that is we did have some, but now we're also being told the weather delay will serve as halftime, and the second quarter will conclude after the delay. So we will not have a halftime then, we're being told. So this is halftime. But at the end of the second quarter, there won't be any, bands out there or anything like that. Then, is my understanding, we'll just go straight into the third quarter. So that's a development for sure as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So I don't know how that's going to impact the, bands here because, people are questioning that. I mean, I would assume it's going to be a situation here where, if they get to perform, it'll be like after the game or something like that. But I'm just guessing, to be quite honest here, at this point in time. And, probably most folks would have already left by then, unfortunately. So, again, just continuing to give you guys the very latest because, they're not going to have the band out there when they have a delay. Now, if there's a needing to be a warm-up period, maybe they can have them out there. But even then, I don't know if the timing would really work out. I don't think that would really work out very good. So, again, that's the word we're getting right now as we're monitoring things, as we're tracking things there. Let me go ahead and keep on looking here. It is 5:18. In fact, let me go ahead and see if I can do something here. Because I know you guys, again, I cannot, show it on the air. But that story I did when I was in college that I, wrote there, produced, and did the interviews for, I can try to get a link up here for you guys so you can watch it. Again, I can't show it to you, but it's from Seminole Productions. But when I had a class there, I worked on that report. The protocols may have changed some, different folks in some of these positions, but, it's just some of the general principles still, even 10 years later, they still are in play. I mean, I heard a script for this. Honestly, I don't have the script right with me, or I could, take some of those notes out of it. But we'll go ahead and link that so you guys can watch that here at some point in time. Let me go ahead and throw that on in here. I'm going to put it in the chat here. Let me just, I haven't ever done this on the fly like this, so bear with me. I want to make sure I do this right. But just make sure I have this in here properly. Again, looking at the radar, not an overwhelmingly concerning picture, which is great news. But we did have that 35% chance kind of coming to fruition for Leon County for sure. Now, right at the stadium itself, maybe not end up getting a precip, but they're showing the view of the stadium right now. Some folks staying in the stands. Some did go into the concourse. I'm sure some probably ended up, leaving there. But, okay, so there's looking like 10 minutes there or more before the delay would end. And if that does end, there'll be 10 minutes to warm up, and then the game would resume in 20 minutes. And we won't have a halftime. We'll play straight through from this into the second quarter there, all the way to the end of the game, unless there's another delay there. So that's the word from the ACC Network broadcast. So I'm putting this link in here, the weather delay, the FSU weather delay story. Okay, so I have that link in here so you guys can watch that, whether it's while you're watching me now or, just, after I end this stream, something like that. I mean, you honestly could just go over to it now, quite honestly, because it goes over some of the different things here. It's a little more concise than what I can be here with, since we don't have that much on the radar, quite honestly. But, this is something there that I put in toward, the chat on the different platforms. I don't think Twitter lets me, but YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, you should be able to see that now if you guys are looking there in toward the chat. So again, or the comments, I guess it would be, depending on what kind of platform you're looking at. So that's kind of the storyline there. As we're tracking things here at 5:22 on this Saturday. Just trying to keep you guys up to date here. Just always interesting here to monitor things in the Weather Center in these type of situations. We could have something like this again tomorrow for the Jacksonville Jaguars game. We could have it even tonight for the Gators game down in South Florida. Not out of the question. I know we're watching everything on all the different platforms here for you. This is hopefully something, again, that's not going to last as long as some of the, other delays we've seen. Even as long as that Jaguar delay, things are a little bit closer in there, and it didn't really have too much precip around there. The wind, I think, was picking up Tallahassee earlier on. We had the boundary. That can cause that to happen. Let me go ahead and just show you some different things here. We're going to switch on over to the Miami radar right now, because I want to check that, because we do have that game there in a couple hours. Miami Gardens, you can see right up here. There is a stadium, Hard Rock Stadium. But nothing right now. That didn't mean in a couple hours there couldn't be something to, cause problems for that game there, Florida at Miami. And then tomorrow, of course, the Jaguar game. We'll be watching there for any delays with that as we're looking. Now, the general thunderstorm risk today for the region. Of course, we cover 62 counties. You see Duval and in the southeast Georgia don't want to have it, but Tallahassee does. It's And you see how little coverage we have of storms here. I mean, this would not be something we'd have to be on for if it wasn't for what we're dealing with the delay. Did have a couple of advisories. So we've had some for the winds to about 40-ish, you know, in the region, but nothing overwhelming. That one to the south right now got up to 40, a possibility. Let me go ahead and keep you guys up to date here on things. Again, we're going to go ahead and pull off some things right now in terms of the live data and put on some other information in terms of that forecast. So the forecast model wasn't really showing too much around Tallahassee, but we ended up getting a little bit more, you know, in terms of some electrical energy than what we would have hoped for. Obviously, don't want any. And you see here tonight, not too much around, but let's back this up just a tad, and then we'll take it down to South Florida because that's where the Gators are playing. They're playing in Miami Gardens, you know, and as you zoom on in here a little bit, there's some shower activity maybe around 7. We'll watch that. We'll be monitoring that. Let me just zoom back out a little just in case things are displaced a bit. I have to hope nothing's worse than that. There's 8, 9, not looking too bad. Maybe something down there at 10, you know, to the south. We'll have to just, you know, make sure it's not displaced enough and has one strike, you know, at night. Maybe a little bit better chance than that game they had at 4:30 last week on the CW that had a delay. But not looking too bad with ARRR, but it wasn't looking too bad for Tallahassee either. And they ended up having a delay. So let me go ahead and jump over for the Jaguar game tomorrow. We'll look at the forecast model for the Bucks game too. So we're going to jump. This is 11 a.m. noon. If I keep going, 1 o'clock, not seeing hardly anything in the model. And now, wow, that's a departure from what we were seeing here. I'm kind of surprised by that, to be honest. You know, not hardly seeing anything there in the forecast model for 1 o'clock there. 2 o'clock, you see some stuff in the coastal waters, but yeah, that's a big difference here. But those winds, northeasterly winds, we could still have, you know, some concern there in terms of the overall gustiness of things. I know we have rip current statement in play, so that's issue for folks at the beaches, the Atlantic beaches. I know, believe it or not, the overall pattern we have, like, you know, in the eastern part of the country and like parts of New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, we have freeze warnings already. So yeah, that's interesting, you know, as I'm looking at my other computer source, but you don't hardly see anything on this model. I'm pretty surprised by that because, you know, things have shifted some based on what we were tracking earlier on. This is another, you know, lower res but longer range model, the GFS here. This is 2 p.m., 5 p.m., not showing too much. So that would be a good thing. Now let's check Tampa. So now I gotta go back here a couple things, you know, on here. I gotta jump back around with a couple of things real quick. Now we'll see how Tampa's looking as we keep on monitoring things here in toward, you know, Weather Center, the area, but even outside of the area because, you know, a lot of folks have an interest in the Bucks. I know we still have the delay with the FSU game, but this is 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock into the Bucks. You know, there's really, you know, interesting creamsicle uniforms. I'll be using those tomorrow. Throwbacks, and then at 3 o'clock, hardly anything sewn up on radar. So maybe just watching out more for warm temperatures down there as well. Then I know it's been hot toward Tallahassee. It's been about wanting to drink plenty of water, obviously, here today. You know, but then you have a delay, which is kind of a conflicts here with the messaging a little bit as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. Let me go ahead and keep you guys up to date here. Let's see if we have any updates on the injury to Tommy Castellanos here. Bear with me. Let me see if we have anything new. Don't see anything new here, but in terms of the injury, let me check the delay here. Okay, I think we just got some information on the delay. Okay, after a 5-minute warm-up at 5:30, play will resume with 2:39 left in the second quarter. So the game will resume at 5:35. There will not be a halftime then. They're just skipping halftime. So after we go to the end of the second quarter, don't leave your TVs. Or, maybe a commercial break, something like that. But they'll be going to the third quarter there. And I don't know how that's going to impact the Marching Chiefs. Unfortunately, I don't know if they'll get to perform. If they do, maybe after the game's over with. But every home game's valuable in terms of folks there wanting to watch those Marching Chiefs. So hopefully they get to perform. I mean, they would have got to perform earlier on. They're at the baseball stadium. That's how they do things, but ahead of time. But still. I know National Weather Service Tallahassee just sent out a tweet here in the last few seconds. Let me go ahead and show you that here if we can. Bear with me here. Give me just 1 second. I want to see you guys. This will be from the Weather Service in Tallahassee. So let me go ahead and put our other source on here. This is kind of interesting. So at 5:27 p.m., they're talking about it's pretty cool to see Leon County, Tallahassee, and nearby locations enclosed with an impressive rain of thunderstorm outflow boundaries. It's a situation where you have a ripple/throw, rock, and pond effect, which is indicative of weak environmental flow common during the summer. So see some of the different polygons they've drawn on up there. But, obviously, for the stadium, things are looking, quite a bit better now. I mean, earlier on, it was looking pretty good there, too. It's looking pretty good there, too. This is, again, from the National Weather Service Tallahassee. This, information, this image there, the Twitter account. But looking better for the game to resume here in very short order. So that's some information there. Let me go ahead and check here some other information in terms of temperature because, folks are probably hot and we're not getting rain there to cool things off. I'm going to check. I know that one is an estimate, so I kind of need to just go. I'll go to the Rec Sportsplex there. What do they have on the thermometer? Still 90 degrees there. So that is an actual reading. So not ideal. Temperature at the airport as of the last update at 5:13. It was 90 degrees. So yeah, not an ideal scenario there. Not an ideal situation, obviously. As we're looking at things and as we're tracking them, then in terms of just the overall warmness out there. You have a delay, but I think people probably getting water, at the different, places that is available there at the stadium there. I mean, because, not actually getting water from the sky, but, instead a situation here where they're getting, water from the different concession stands and the like. That's kind of storyline there. That game should be resuming very soon there in Tallahassee. So, again, we're just trying to give you the updates. Let me put that out on Twitter for folks that are, maybe not watching the stream. Again, FSU has this game one hand, 35-7 lead, but Tommy Castellano is suffering some type of injury there just moments before the delay. And backup quarterback Kevin Sperry there from the state of Oklahoma, the true freshman, having to come in. So I'll have to just see how things go for the Noles here with all of this. Okay, last strike there within 8 miles. As I'm looking back here, was at 5:09. So yeah, things are looking, quite a bit better in terms of everything there. We did have a ground strike 9.92 miles to the south at 5:24 according to FSU Weather Stand, but things are now 24 minutes past when we had that last strike there within the radius. So game will be resuming here just momentarily in toward Tallahassee. So again, no halftime, so there won't be, maybe just put a commercial break there. The lightning delay, as the announcer saying on the telecast, acted as the halftime. So that's kind of the storyline there as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. Just trying to give you guys the latest updates. Again, hopefully, since he was able to walk to the locker room, Tommy Castellanos, he was available, as we're looking ahead there, or is available, and, that's the good news, hopefully, but we can't guarantee it. Probably would have, had more, of a situation there where would have had to kind of be having some more assistance. So, they're about to have that game resume there. And the way the coaches are with Gus Malzahn over there next to Kevin Sperry, it looks like it's going to be his game then. He has his helmet on, right there. So it's looking like it might be his time here, whether it's a situation about the injury here, causing things to kind of play out like this for just the rest of the game because it's severe enough, or it could just be they're trying to be extra cautious of the game on hand. And then there'll be that game Friday night up in Charlottesville next Friday there. That's a big one, FSU UVA, next Friday night on the ESPN Family and Networks. I need to double check here what channel that's going to be on. I want to say it's on ESPN2. Let me just give you those particulars. Games resuming now, by the way, if you're wondering. So make sure you tune into the ACC Network. But yeah, 7 o'clock next Friday on ESPN. They're at UVA, the main ESPN up in Charlottesville. But yeah, the game's resuming now. Kevin Sperry is the one leading the Noles in the huddle there. So that's going to be, a difference. They got the, guys on in there, some of the other starters with him as they're running quickly up to the line now. So make sure you tune into the ACC Network as a running back that's going to take it in for another touchdown quickly out of the delay to make it 41-7. 2:16 left in the second quarter. So very quickly now out of the delay. The weather is, looking better. It wasn't all that bad there to begin with, but we had the lightning within the radius, technically within 8 miles. It was on the southern flank. There's sun out there now. There's been sun out for a while, during most of this there, so that's the good news. We're going to wrap it up for now. I thank you so much for tuning in. FSU now 41-7 on the ACC Network. So, and Jake Weinberg, I assume, still in there to try that extra point, and he makes it 42-7 there. So that would be, another extra point for him. That's 6 of them today. Not really getting that field goal practice, but had that good kick against Alabama. Should be, great kicker for the Noles. You never know because it's not a pressure situation, but Noles well in control of it. 42-7 now after the delay, right after the delay, literally ran up to the line, snapped it, got the touchdown. Now 42-7 there for the Garnet and Gold. We'll have to see how things go with the Marching Chiefs, if they'll be able to perform right after the game, or the overall setup for that, because no halftime is going to go straight into the third from the second. That's the storyline for now. Let me see if there's any questions, comments from any of the viewers at home. I don't really necessarily see anything here on the one source. Let me just check. All of them, I don't see anything. Thanks for tuning in. Trust in me. Stay safe out there. Go Noles. Game there. Out of the delay now. Noles up 42-7. Jake Weinberg, they're going to kick it on off. Number 22 for the Noles there. He's from the West Palm Beach area now. Our, starting quarterback there, Tommy Castellanos from the Waycross area. Our backup quarterback, Kevin Sperry there. I wish it was Sperry. That would kind of go a little bit there, but it's Sperry, the pronunciation for that. He's from the Tulsa, Oklahoma area. So, I believe, or let me double check that actually. I say that, and I think I'm wrong on that. Just let me double check there. I think he was committed to Oklahoma, and then he actually switched over to FSU. He's actually from the Denton, Texas area. I beg your pardon. So, trying to, get all my information right here on the fly. I'm hoping we wouldn't have to come on for this, but, this is how things work right now. With these delays, you have to be ready to jump in here when, local games of, big magnitude. We talked about every game's a big game for FSU in the playoff race. And, a situation here where the Noles, have the game well in hand there. So going to the 2-minute timeout up 42-7 there. 42-7 as we're looking at things and we're tracking things here. So that's kind of the storyline right now. Or even going to break. I thought they were going to go to break there, but with the 2-minute timeout, but with all the break we've had, maybe they just want to kind of get this one over with. So that's going to do it. We're going to leave coverage now. Stay safe. We'll pop back in if we need to.